Football is a violent sport, which is what makes evaluating players still in high school so difficult. After all, a guy might tear his state apart as a high school senior, only to get a nasty knee injury during his first practice on campus and never play again. That's what makes things like the USA Today All-USA high school football team so intriguing. These young men were among the best of the best, but many of them never found NFL greatness. Today, we're taking a look back at the 1982 USA Today All-USA team and seeing what happened to all 24 players, starting with the offense. John Paye. While Paye was selected as the first ever USA Today Offensive Player of the Year because of his accomplishments on the gridiron as a quarterback, he was also a star basketball player. He would go on to play both sports at Stanford, starting as the team's quarterback as a true freshman. In replacing former All-American John Elway, Paye's freshman season was up and down. The next season, he'd split time with Fred Buckley, but he won back the starting job in 1985. His play wasn't great by modern standards, but he was named to the All-Pac-10 second team in back-to-back years. During his senior season, he led the team to an 8-3 record with 14 touchdowns. Unfortunately, he was unable to play in the Gator Bowl and the team lost to Clemson. He was then selected in the 10th round of the 1987 NFL Draft by the 49ers. He'd stick with the team for 2 seasons but never saw the field. He would then go back to his high school alma mater, Manoa, and coach his sister Kate's basketball team. Those teams won 3 straight state titles, and Kate currently works as the head coach of Stanford's women's basketball team. Paye would coach at several high schools around California, winning at least 2 state titles before retiring in 2023. Hiawatha Francisco. Francisco was a bruising running back from Cincinnati. He would head to Notre Dame for college ball and ran for nearly 200 yards in just 38 attempts as a freshman. However, he would endure several knee injuries over his 4-year career. When it was all said and done, Francisco ran for 538 yards and 3 touchdowns while enduring 15 different knee surgeries. His brother DeJuan followed him to Notre Dame and had slightly more success after converting to defensive back and was drafted by Washington in 1990. For his part, Francisco has been working in educational administration for the last 20 years, currently working as a principal in Cincinnati. Kirk Jones. Jones went to UNLV for college ball and contributed as a freshman with 7 total touchdowns. However, he would truly break out in 1984 as a sophomore when he rushed for over 1,000 yards. His numbers fell off slightly as a junior, but he became more involved in the passing game as one of Randall Cunningham's weapons. Unfortunately, he was limited to only 8 games as a senior, but he was still able to churn out enough yards to be 5th in UNLV history with 2,656 yards out of the backfield for his career. It looks like he went undrafted, but he did spend time on a few teams, playing 1 game in 1987 for the Cleveland Browns. Unfortunately, Jones passed away in 2001 after a heart attack. His son Chris would later play for the Runnin' Rebels from 2008 to 2010 as a safety and linebacker. Jeff Atkins. A running back, Atkins was widely viewed as the top recruit coming out of Texas after putting up 2,333 all-purpose yards and 25 touchdowns as a senior. He signed with SMU for his college career and was an instant success, rushing for nearly 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns as a freshman. Over his 4-year career, Atkins would amass over 3,000 yards and 31 TDs but went undrafted. He had an unsuccessful tryout with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in 1987, and struggles with drugs kept him from playing football for several years. He did make a short comeback with the Dallas Texans in the Arena League in 1991, but has seemingly fallen out of the public eye in the years since. If you have any updated info, please share it in the comments. Jeff Zimmerman. Zimmerman was born in the best city in the world, Enid, Oklahoma, but played high school football in Orlando, Florida. The massive offensive lineman would accept a scholarship to play under Charlie Pell at the University of Florida and was the team's backup guard as a freshman. The next year, he'd solidify his spot as the team's starting right guard and made the second team All-SEC. The year after that, he missed 2 games with a knee injury but still made the All-American team. In his senior year, the one-man game was moved to right tackle and was again an integral part of the Great Wall of Florida, making the All-American team for the 2nd straight season. Zimmerman was then selected in the 3rd round of the 87 draft by the Cowboys. During his rookie season, he backed up Nate Newton and famously knocked Lawrence Taylor unconscious with a bone-crunching blitz pickup. He made 1 start that year, but picked up a shoulder injury ahead of his 2nd season that limited him to just 1 game. In '89, he was again a key backup, starting 1 game at right tackle and even making a few appearances at tight end when the Cowboys needed an extra blocker. In 1990, he again had some injury woes and only played in 6 games. The next year, he would decide to retire from football due to problems with controlling his weight. Since then, he had mostly faded out of the spotlight and sadly passed away in 2024. Terence Mann. Mann made the team as one of the best offensive linemen in the country, but he left his native Detroit to play defensive tackle for SMU. I haven't been able to track down any official stats, but he did play for the school until he was drafted by the Dolphins in 1987. He only ever made the practice squad, so there's also no NFL stats to report either. In 1991, he was shot 3 times while trying to stop a robbery and survived. As of 2014, it looks like he's still living in the Dallas area, working as a drug and alcohol counselor. Glen Mogle. First, I've been unable to find an actual pronunciation for his name, so apologies if I've got it wrong. Mogle left Florida to play at Michigan, but was only able to suit up for 1 season. Unfortunately, several recurring injuries forced the 6'8" lineman to transfer to Florida after his freshman year. He never played for the Gators and has since fallen out of the public eye. Again, if you have any more information, share it in the comments. Curt Jarvis. Jarvis is another guy who made the switch to the defensive line when he went to college at Alabama. It turned out to be a smart move for Jarvis as he was named to the All-SEC team in 1986. He was then selected in the 7th round of the 1987 draft by the Bucs. Jarvis played for the team for 4 seasons, becoming a full-time starter in 1988. He would amass 8.5 sacks over those 2 years, but an unfortunate injury would force him into retirement during the 1990 season. Jarvis would then take on his boyhood dream of becoming a pilot, and as of 2024 has been working for Delta for nearly 25 years. Ironically, he was the pilot who flew the Auburn team to the 2014 national championship game that they would win. Mike McGann. McGann grew up in Illinois and decided to keep it local by becoming a Fighting Illini. He stuck with the school for 4 years, but transferred after his redshirt junior season to St. Francis, an NAIA D2 school. Following that, it seems like he left the spotlight. In 2001, he was working as a production supervisor, but I've been unable to track down anything more current. Alvin Miller. Parade named Miller its National Prep Football Player of the Year in 1983, so big things were expected from the wideout when he went to Notre Dame. His freshman season mostly saw him returning kicks, but he flashed his potential grabbing a touchdown pass in that year's Liberty Bowl. However, knee injuries started to pile up, keeping Miller from living up to what seemed like limitless potential. It also has to be noted that there was some scandal about Miller accepting money to play for the Irish. Eventually, Miller would earn his degree and then enter the business world back in his native St. Louis. Tyrone Vaughns. Vaughns was coming off of a Louisiana State title with John Eyre at high school, and he headed to Tulane for college ball. He played there for 2 years, totaling 11 receptions and 3 touchdowns. He left the program after the '84 season and has disappeared from the public eye. Again, I've been unable to track anything down, so if you have any info, share it below. Scott Webb. The All-USA team place kicker, Webb went to San Diego State and kicked 1 extra point for the team in 1984. I'm not sure if he also played baseball for the Aztecs, but it does seem like he was playing minor league ball in 1988 as a pitcher. He never made the majors, and I haven't been able to track down much further information. Now we move to the defense, where things get a little bit better in terms of NFL-level talent. Henry Harris. Harris was named the USA Today National Defensive Player of the Year before heading to Georgia to play linebacker. He was solid for the Bulldogs, even making the All-SEC team in 1986, but he never made it onto an NFL roster. He then jumped into coaching, most notably with Alabama A&M, where he's been working for the last 27 years. He's held positions at everything from defensive line coach to equipment manager. John Hazard. Hazard made the USA Today team as a defensive lineman, but he played both sides of the line at LSU. He was one of the last two-way linemen to play for the Tigers and was soon followed by his younger brother Nicky at the school. Hazard didn't make it to the NFL, but he has been working as a coach at the high school level since hanging him up. His son Sonny was recently playing for the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Chuck Williams. Williams was one of the most highly recruited defensive prospects in the nation, but decided to stay local and play for Pitt. Unfortunately, a severe injury during the summer before he started his collegiate career forced him to take a red shirt. From everything I could find, he either never played again due to injuries or didn't accumulate any stats. Either way, Williams never made it to the NFL and faded out of the public eye. Tim Manoa. Manoa made the list as a defensive lineman, and that's where he began his career at Penn State. However, after his freshman season, he was converted to fullback. As a member of the Baby Bull backfield, Manoa ran for 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns during his final 3 years, helping the Nittany Lions win the 1986 national championship. Manoa was then drafted 80th overall by the Browns in the '87 draft. He played with the team for 3 seasons before spending one last year with the Colts in '91. Over his career, he ran for 938 yards and 6 touchdowns. It looks like he's held several different jobs over the years, but appears to be the president of a construction company as of 2024. Alonzo Highsmith. Highsmith was the best defensive prospect out of Florida, and he would stick with the University of Miami over offers from Notre Dame and Michigan. Like Manoa, Highsmith played defensive line but switched to fullback very quickly. While he didn't play a ton as a freshman, he did help the team win the 1983 national championship. Jimmy Johnson took over head coach the next season and named Highsmith the starter. He responded with 906 yards on just 146 carries and 11 total touchdowns. His next 2 seasons weren't as productive from a numbers standpoint, but he was still one of the best fullbacks in the country. He finished his career with nearly 3,000 all-purpose yards, 25 touchdowns, and 5 100-yard rushing games. Highsmith was then selected 3rd overall by the Oilers in the '87 draft, but held out for 6 months, missing 6 games. He started every game during his follow-up campaign and developed into one of the best blocking tight ends in the league while rushing for almost 500 yards. 1989 was similar, but in 1990, Jack Pardee took over as the team's head coach and implemented the run-and-shoot offense. Highsmith wasn't a good fit for the scheme and was traded to the Cowboys. By that point, Highsmith had endured several off-season knee injuries, but Cowboys coach Jimmy Johnson ignored the doctor's advice and made the trade. Over 2 years, he'd suit up for only 9 games and was traded to the Bucs. He played there for 2 seasons before retiring in '92. Highsmith then went into boxing and compiled a 27-1-2 record as a heavyweight over 4 years. In 2012, he jumped back into the game as an executive with the Packers. Currently, he's working as the senior personnel executive for the Patriots. Stan Tony Woods. Like Manoa, Woods would attend Pitt where he played linebacker and defensive end. Over his career, he racked up 242 tackles and 31 sacks and was named to the All-American team in 1986. In the '86 USFL draft, he became the last player ever selected in that league when the Houston Gamblers picked him 92nd overall. He would stay in school instead and was drafted 18th overall by the Seahawks in the '87 draft. He played there until 1992, starting most games as an outside linebacker or defensive end. Woods then spent 1 season with the Rams before wrapping up his career with 3 years in Washington. Over his 10 years in the NFL, Woods racked up nearly 700 tackles and 24.5 sacks. After wrapping up his career, he would jump into coaching at the high school level. He'd also spend a few years coaching the defensive line at William Patterson University, but most recently has been working as an assistant coach at Seton Hall Prep, his alma mater. Keith Davis. Davis was born and raised in Los Angeles, so it's no surprise that he decided to head to USC to play linebacker. There, he participated in 2 Rose Bowl games and was often seen as one of the strongest players, claiming a 500-pound plus bench press. Davis then signed with the New York Giants in 1988, but a knee injury during the preseason cut his career short, though it is worth noting it doesn't look like he was drafted, making his path to an NFL roster pretty tough. Either way, Davis would then jump into a motivational speaking career where he continues to work as of 2024. David Stanley. Stanley would stick in Texas to play linebacker at SMU. He played in 12 games in 1984, grabbing 2 picks, but was battling injuries and substance abuse problems the entire time he was with the school. He was cut from the team that same year and would eventually come forward to the press saying he'd been paid $25,000 to play for the Mustangs and was given a monthly stipend while playing with the team. This, along with several other violations, would eventually lead to SMU being hit with the death penalty. The whole saga is covered in much more detail in other videos, so check it out if you want to know more. Sadly, Stanley would never overcome his addictions. He played in 3 games with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in 1988 and unfortunately passed away in his sleep in 2005. Miles Smith. Unfortunately, I've been unable to find much information about Smith. He played for the Georgia Bulldogs for at least 2 years, racking up 4 interceptions over 21 games. He doesn't seem like he was drafted, and I've been unable to find any info about him post-1986, so please let me know in the comments if you have any extra info. Eric Kumerow. Kumerow was the son of former NFL player Palmer Pyle and his wife Marie Accardo, who is the daughter of Chicago mob boss Tony Accardo. His mother would eventually remarry and Eric would take his stepfather's last name. Notably, he's also related to John Bosa, who many will know as the father of Joey and Nick Bosa. Kumerow played college football for Ohio State. He started his career as a quarterback, but switched to defensive end during his sophomore season. In 1985, he was named to the All-Big Ten second team. The next 2 years, he'd make the league's first team squad and pick up the 1986 Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year award. Kumerow was then selected with the 16th pick by the Dolphins in the 1988 draft. Interestingly, that was 1 year after they drafted his brother-in-law, John Bosa. He switched to defensive end and picked up 3 sacks in 14 games as a rookie. The next 2 years, he played 28 games and added 2 more sacks and interception. In 1991, he signed with the Bears, but he tore his Achilles and retired soon after. Since then, it appears he's been working in the sales world, most recently working at a flooring company back in his native Chicago. His son Jake also played in the NFL as a wide receiver with the Packers and Bills from 2018 to 2022. Rod Woodson. Woodson took his talents to Purdue and quickly became one of the best defensive backs in the country. That said, he also returned kicks and even pulled duty on offense. Over his 4 years as a Boilermaker, he was named to the All-Big Ten first team 3 times and was a 2-time All-American, making the list as both a defensive back and kick returner in '86. He was also an accomplished track and field athlete, finishing as high as second in the 55-meter hurdles at the NCAA championships. He was then selected 10th overall by the Steelers in the '87 draft. Over his 16-year career, he led the league in picks twice, made 11 Pro Bowls, grabbed 9 total All-Pro nods, won the 1993 NFL Defensive Player of the Year, and won the 2000 Super Bowl with the Ravens. Woody retired with 1,158 career tackles, 71 interceptions, 13 defensive TDs, and 13.5 sacks. As of 2024, he is third all-time in interceptions and third all-time in non-defensive touchdowns at 17. In short, he's one of the best defensive players to ever lace him up. He would jump into coaching at the NFL level in 2010 with the Bengals. He since coached for several other teams, most recently working as the head coach of the Vegas Vipers in the XFL. Woodson was named to the Hall of Fame in 2009. Van Tiffin. Tiffin grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi, and elected to head to Alabama for college ball. While he made the USA Today roster as a punter, he was a place kicker for the Crimson Tide. In 1985, he booted in a 57-yard kick against Texas A&M, which is still a school record. He also converted 135 of 135 extra points over his career, which wasn't broken until 2009 when his son Lee beat him by 1. Tiffin is probably most well known for the kick, which he hit in the 1985 Iron Bowl to beat Auburn 25-23. That 52-yarder as time expired remains one of the marquee moments in the school's long history. Tiffin was named a first-team All-American and All-SEC player in 1986. He went undrafted in the 87 draft, but he did play a few games with the Dolphins and Bucks that year, going 5 of 7 with a long of 50 and never missing an extra point. He would then go and work in the family business of selling RVs back in Alabama. As mentioned, his son Lee would kick for Alabama in the late 2000s, helping them win the 2010 national championship.